The Galactic Empire had long viewed humanity as nothing more than a primitive species. Their advanced technology, vast fleet, and powerful military forces made them confident in their dominance over the galaxy. The humans of Earth had barely begun to explore their own solar system, and the Empire had always assumed that conquering Earth would be an easy task. But Earth had its secrets. Months before the invasion, Earth's leaders had begun to suspect something was coming. They had no clear idea of what, but there was enough intelligence to suggest that an external force was preparing to strike. Earth's governments united for the first time, pooling their resources and sharing their military technologies. A worldwide defense effort was launched in complete secrecy. Underground bunkers were built, weapons were stockpiled, and soldiers were trained in combat tactics never seen before. Humans were no longer the underdogs they had once been. When the Empire's fleet finally arrived in Earth's orbit, they were confident that it would be a routine operation. They sent down their troops with no real fear of resistance. Earth was supposed to fall within hours, but it didn't. The invasion began with the drop of thousands of alien soldiers onto Earth's surface, and the Empire's forces quickly overwhelmed the planet's weak defenses. Cities burned, and millions of humans were slaughtered. But in the midst of the chaos, something unexpected happened. Earth's soldiers fought back. Their tactics were unorthodox, and their weaponry, while not as advanced as the Empire's, was effective enough to slow the alien forces. For the first time in the Empire's history, they were faced with an adversary who wasn't afraid to stand and fight. It was clear that humanity, in its desperation, had become far more dangerous than the Empire had ever anticipated. The human soldiers weren't just resisting, they were adapting. Their strategy was unpredictable, and the Empire found itself struggling to keep up. For every step forward they made, the humans seemed to find a way to counter it. Some of the Empire's greatest warriors fell in battle, leaving the commanders rattled. And then, in a final act of desperation, a human soldier, only one, survived. The Empire's commanders were baffled. The soldier who returned was unlike any other they had encountered. He was alone, and he had no immediate answer for the countless questions they had. He had been part of a battalion sent to fight on the front lines, but now he was the only one left. His unit, once filled with hope and bravery, had been decimated by the alien forces. The rest were gone, and yet this single soldier had returned. He stepped off the transport ship in silence, his eyes hollow, his face impassive. Did not speak to anyone as he was escorted through the Empire's heavily guarded facilities. His clothes were torn, his skin smeared with dirt and blood, and his eyes reflected the horrors of the battle he had witnessed. The soldiers and officers who met him were curious but apprehensive. They had expected a warrior who would tell them everything, who would share the secrets of humanity's defenses, their tactics, their weapons. They wanted to know how the human race had managed to delay their victory. They wanted to know what made Earth's soldiers so different. But the soldier said nothing. The Empire's military leaders quickly arranged for an interrogation. The soldier was placed in a small, sterile room with only a table between him and his captors. They sat across from him, prepared for what they expected would be an easy extraction of information. Yet when the questioning began, the soldier did not respond. He remained motionless, his eyes fixed on the wall, as if lost in his own thoughts. His silence was unsettling. Hours passed with no word. The officers grew frustrated. They asked about Earth's military strategy, their weapon systems, their strengths and weaknesses. They asked how humanity had managed to survive for so long in a war it had no chance of winning. But there was no answer. The more the officers pressed, the more the soldier's silence seemed to grow. He would not break. There was no sign of fear or guilt in his eyes, only a deep, unspoken sorrow. It was as if his mind had shut off, blocking out everything around him. The officers tried various tactics. They brought in different languages, different methods of persuasion, even threats, but it was all in vain. The soldier did not speak. In his silence, he held a power that no one understood. He was a puzzle that refused to be solved. Weeks passed, and the soldier remained under observation. His silence became a topic of much discussion. Some of the Empire's top strategists speculated that he was simply too afraid to talk, that he had seen too much, lost too much. Others believed that he was hiding something, some secret weapon or strategy that could turn the tide of the war in Earth's favor. But there was no way of knowing for sure. To the Empire, this was a grave threat. They had been used to the usual protocol: conquer the planet, interrogate the survivors, and extract every last bit of information. But the soldier refused to follow that script. The more they tried to break him, the more they began to realize that they were the ones who were broken. The soldier's silence began to weigh heavily on the Empire. It gnawed at them, leaving them with more questions than answers. Why wouldn't he talk? What had happened on Earth? And perhaps more chillingly, what could this single soldier's silence mean for the future of the galaxy? In the Empire's eyes, humanity was still a threat, but this soldier had become a symbol of something even more unsettling, a silent testament to the strength of the human will, a force that no alien could easily understand or overcome. The Galactic Empire was about to learn something that no amount of advanced weaponry or strategy could have ever prepared them for. Silence, when it comes from a soldier, can be louder than any roar of war. The soldier sat in the sterile white room, his back against the cold metal wall. He had not spoken a word since he arrived. His eyes, once filled with the fire of battle, were now empty, distant, and unfocused. His face was gaunt, as though he hadn't slept in days. His hands, trembling ever so slightly, were folded in his lap, and he stared down at them as if lost in his own world. His silence was unnerving, and it was exactly what the Galactic Empire hadn't expected. In the days that followed, the soldiers who guarded him noticed something strange. He never asked for food, never showed any interest in his surroundings. They thought at first that he might be playing some game, holding out in an effort to protect Earth's secrets. But that theory faded quickly when the soldier showed no signs of fear or anxiety. Instead, there was just nothing. Silence. Complete detachment. Empire officers came and went trying to get him to talk, but each session was the same. They used different tactics. Some tried a soft approach, offering him comforts, asking gently about the battle, about Earth. Others were more forceful, pushing him, demanding answers. Some even tried to use alien telepathic techniques to invade his mind, hoping to pry out the information they needed. But each time they failed. No matter what they did, he wouldn't speak. Commander Turs, the officer assigned to the soldier's case, grew increasingly frustrated. The officer had seen it all: the defeated enemies, the shattered wills, the broken spirits. But this soldier was different. He was a complete enigma. There was no fear in his eyes, no pain, just a deep, haunting quiet. "Why won't you talk?" Commander Turs asked during one of his many sessions. He sat across from the soldier, leaning in, trying to make eye contact. "You're the only one who survived. You know something, don't you? Why won't you help us understand what happened?" The soldier's lips did not twitch. His eyes didn't even flicker. He simply stared back at the commander, his expression unchanging. Turs's voice softened. "We don't want to hurt you. You've been through enough. Just talk. Give us something." But still, there was no response. Turs clenched his fists, holding back his frustration. "You're just making this harder on yourself. On Earth. We'll win this war one way or another. Don't you want to be part of it? To make sure your people don't suffer more?" The soldier blinked, but that was all. He didn't move, didn't shift, and didn't show any sign of acknowledgement. Turs stood up, shaking his head. "I don't get it. What kind of soldier are you?" The commander left the room in defeat, the weight of his failure pressing down on him. The silence continued to haunt him. Each day it became more unbearable. The others began to talk. The whispers spread through the ranks of the Empire, all wondering the same thing. What was it about this soldier that no one could break? Meanwhile, the soldier remained as he always had, silent, distant, and withdrawn. His thoughts, locked away behind his stoic gaze, were never shared. But inside, a storm raged. He remembered the battle, the chaos, and the unrelenting assault of the Empire's forces. He remembered his comrades, brave, strong, and full of hope. They fought to the last man, knowing they couldn't win, but fighting anyway. For their families, for their world. He remembered the pain, the fire, the screams. The soldier had seen it all, the destruction, the death, the fear in his comrades' eyes as they fell, one by one. He had fought beside them, doing everything he could, pushing back against the seemingly endless waves of alien soldiers. They fought with everything they had, but in the end, Earth was just too small, too outmatched. His unit was decimated in a brutal assault. He alone had survived. The soldier had tried. He had tried to protect them, tried to fight for his people, for his world. But in the end, the Empire's strength was too much. He was left behind, a broken man, the last of his kind on the battlefield. He couldn't even find the words to speak of the devastation. How could he explain the weight of those moments, the terror that ran through him as he saw his comrades fall? How could he voice the unbearable guilt that filled him when he realized he was the only one left? It wasn't just the fear of death that silenced him. It was the overwhelming weight of what had been lost. He couldn't speak of it. He couldn't bring himself to relive it, not even in the quiet of his mind. Back in the Empire's facility, days passed in silence. The soldier never responded. His captors grew more desperate. They tried interrogations. They tried drugs, hoping to loosen his tongue. They even brought in an alien telepath to break through his mental defenses, but still, he said nothing. As time passed, the soldier began to realize something. This silence, this refusal to speak, was his only remaining form of defiance. He had no more strength to fight physically, no more weapons to wield, but his silence could speak louder than any weapon. It was his way of resisting the Empire, his way of telling them they couldn't break him. Even if they broke his body, the silence, he found his power. Commander Terz, now growing more anxious, convened a meeting with the other officers. "This soldier," he began, "is not like the others we've faced. His silence is not weakness, it's strength. He's carrying something with him, a secret. He's protecting something, and we have to break him to get it." But deep down, the commander knew the truth. This soldier wasn't protecting a weapon or a plan. He was protecting something far more powerful, his own spirit, and no amount of torture or persuasion would ever make him speak. The more the Empire tried to break him, the more they realized that they were the ones losing. The soldier had become the symbol of humanity's will to survive. And in his silence, he had made it clear. Humanity was not going to be crushed easily. Not by an empire, not by any force in the galaxy. The soldier's silence spoke the truth that the Empire had failed to understand. Humanity, for all its flaws, was something that could never be defeated. And with that realization, the soldiers of the Empire were left wondering, what had they unleashed by bringing this silent warrior into their midst? The silence that the soldier held in the Empire's prison was deafening. His mind, however, was far from quiet. As he sat in that cold room, locked away from the world, memories of Earth began to flood his thoughts. The sounds, the faces, and the battle itself returned to him like a haunting dream, vivid and raw. He was once just a soldier, a regular man, fighting for his home, his family, and the people he loved. He had been trained like any other soldier, but there had been something different about Earth's forces. Unlike the Empire's military, Earth soldiers didn't have the luxury of advanced weaponry or alien technologies. Their strength was in their spirit, their determination, and their unity. They had come together in the face of impossible odds, driven by the will to survive. The soldier remembered the day the invasion began. The skies had darkened with the shadows of alien ships, enormous and ominous. It had been a bright, peaceful morning when the first wave struck. A sudden burst of blinding light had shattered the calm, followed by a terrible roar that shook the very earth beneath his feet. The Empire's ships had descended from the heavens like an unstoppable storm. Panic spread across the world. Governments scrambled, Military forces mobilized, and ordinary people ran for cover. The soldier had been in the military for several years, trained to fight in any condition, but nothing could prepare him for what came next. His first taste of the invasion was the explosion that rattled the base where he had been stationed. It was just the beginning. "Prepare for the worst," his commander had said, his voice tense with fear. "They're not here for peace." The soldiers were given their orders. Hold the line. The Empire was coming with overwhelming force. But Earth's soldiers fought back with everything they had. The soldier joined his unit, a group of men and women he had trained with for years. They had become like family, bound by their shared mission and unspoken trust. The first clash was brutal. The alien forces were fast, their weapons more advanced than anything the humans had seen. But Earth's soldiers were not intimidated. The soldier fought beside his comrades, using every trick in the book to outmaneuver the invaders. They planted traps, set up ambushes, and fought hand to hand when the situation demanded it. Each victory, no matter how small, brought them a sense of hope. But with each passing hour, the enemy's numbers grew. The soldier could see the fear in the eyes of his comrades, but he also saw something else, an unshakable determination. As the battle raged on, Earth's forces began to retreat. The soldiers knew they couldn't hold out forever. Their ammunition was running low, their numbers thinning. The soldiers' unit was ordered to evacuate, to fall back and regroup, but it was already too late. They had no time to escape. The soldier found himself at the front lines, fighting until his legs burned with exhaustion, his vision blurred from the smoke and dust. His fellow soldiers fought valiantly, but one by one, they fell. He saw his friends and comrades go down, some to blaster fire, others to the crushing force of the alien war machines. The soldier could hear their screams as they died. He could hear the cries of the wounded, the calls for help, but there was nothing he could do. He could still remember the look in his commander's eyes as the officer fell, a gaping wound in his chest. "Get out of here," the commander had whispered, clutching the soldier's arm. "Live for us, tell them we fought." And then the soldier was alone. He fought on, every move a desperate attempt to survive, to carry on the fight that his fallen comrades could no longer finish. It was in those final moments, when everything seemed lost, that he understood what made humanity different. The Empire's forces were vast and powerful, but they did not have the will to survive, to keep fighting when there was no hope left. The human spirit, as fragile as it seemed, was unbreakable. The soldier had witnessed it firsthand. In the last hours of the battle, he made a final, desperate push. With nothing left to lose, he faced the alien invaders head-on, knowing he wouldn't survive. But somehow, against all odds, he made it, out alive. The enemy had underestimated him, underestimated humanity. While the alien forces had been relentless, they had failed to crush the human will to fight. When the soldier awoke, the battlefield was silent. The smoke had cleared, and the bodies of his fallen comrades lay scattered across the ruins. He was the only one left. He didn't know how long he had been unconscious, but the world around him had changed. Earth was no longer the place he had once known. The invasion had torn it apart. The cities were in ruins, and the landscape had been altered beyond recognition. But in the soldier's heart, a flicker of hope remained. He had survived, and that alone was a testament to humanity's strength. In the days that followed, he made his way across the desolate land, carrying the memories of his comrades with him. He knew he couldn't stop the invasion alone, but he could fight until his last breath. The soldier's journey was no longer about winning. It was about survival. It was about showing the invaders that humanity would not go down without a fight. And when the Empire's forces finally found him, he knew what had to be done. He had to survive, to bring the story of Earth's resistance to the galaxy. He had to make sure that humanity's strength was known, that the Empire understood that no matter what happened, no matter how many times they were knocked down, humans would always rise again. Back in the Empire's facility, as the soldier sat in silence, he felt the weight of that responsibility on his shoulders. He could not speak of the horrors he had witnessed, nor could he find the words to explain the grief he carried. But what he could do, what he had done, was to survive. And in that survival, He had proven something far more important than any weapon or strategy. He had proven that humanity was a force the Empire could never fully understand. As the soldiers' memories faded, the silence in the room grew heavier. The weight of Earth's story was now his alone to carry, and though he did not speak, his silence was his loudest message: humanity would not be defeated. The days dragged on in the sterile confines of the Empire's facility, each one a reflection of the same frustrating silence. The soldiers' refusal to speak had become an obsession for the Empire. High-ranking officers, strategists, and interrogators came and went, all attempting to break through the unyielding wall of silence that the soldier had erected around himself. But no one could understand the depth of the silence. The soldier's lips remained sealed, his eyes unblinking, his face devoid of emotion. Commander Turs, the officer in charge of the soldier's case, was growing desperate. He had tried everything: persuasion, intimidation, even threats. But nothing seemed to work. The soldier remained as distant as ever, a silent enigma. Each failed attempt to extract information only deepened the mystery, and now, Turs found himself at a crossroads. He had to understand why the soldier wouldn't speak. "Bring in the telepath," Turs ordered one morning, his voice sharp with frustration. The telepath, an alien capable of probing minds, entered the room with a calm demeanor. He was confident, believing that his abilities would succeed where physical methods had failed. He stood before the soldier and placed his hands on the table, closing his eyes in concentration. The telepath's powers were formidable. He could extract thoughts, feelings, and memories with ease. But even the telepath was unsuccessful. Minutes passed, and then an hour. The telepath's brows furrowed as he struggled, trying to pry into the soldier's mind. Finally, he opened, his eyes, sweat forming on his forehead. "There's nothing," the telepath said, his voice tinged with disbelief. "It's like there's a wall, a complete block. I cannot reach him." Commander Turs stared at the soldier, who still sat, motionless, unfazed by the telepath's efforts. For the first time, Turs felt a flicker of doubt. What was this soldier hiding? Why had he chosen to remain silent even under the most intense pressure? Turs paced back and forth, his mind racing. The soldier had fought with fierce determination, on Earth. He had survived against impossible odds, and now he had been captured. There had to be something behind this silence, something the soldier was unwilling to share. As the days passed, the Empire's leadership grew anxious. They had expected a quick victory over Earth, but this lone soldier's refusal to speak was beginning to cause unrest. Some officers began to argue that the soldier was a symbol of something much greater than they had anticipated. This was not just about information, it was about defiance. The more they tried to break the soldier, the more they realized that they were facing a different kind of enemy. An enemy whose strength wasn't in weapons or technology, but in willpower and resilience. The soldiers of the Empire were well-trained, powerful, and intelligent, but they had never encountered a species. Like humanity, the more they studied the soldier, the more they understood that Earth's strength lay not in their technology, but in their spirit. The soldier had survived because he had a reason to keep fighting, something that the Empire's forces could never understand. "I think I understand," Turs said one evening, speaking to his superiors. "This soldier, this human, he's not just hiding information. He's hiding something much more powerful. He's hiding Earth's heart. He's hiding humanity's resolve." The Empire's leaders exchanged uneasy glances. They had always seen humanity as weak, primitive, and easily crushed. But now this one soldier, with his silence and unbroken spirit, had begun to change their perception. The Empire had expected a simple conquest, an easy victory, but this soldier had proven that humanity was not to be underestimated. "The problem is not that he refuses to speak," Turs continued. "It's that he's showing us something we don't want to see. This soldier has endured things we can't even imagine, and he has chosen to remain silent, not because he's afraid, but because he knows the power of silence." Turs's words hung in the air as the room fell quiet. The leaders of the Empire, were left to grapple with the reality of their situation. They had come to conquer Earth, but now they were facing something they had not planned for, an enemy whose spirit could not be broken. "What do we do now?" one of the officers asked, his voice tinged with uncertainty. "We watch him," Ters replied. "We wait, and we learn." The silence that surrounded the soldier was becoming more than just a mystery. It had become a weight on the entire empire. The officers and strategists, once confident in their ability to crush humanity, were now beginning to question everything they thought they knew about the human race. They had assumed that the Empire's power would break Earth's spirit, but this one soldier with his refusal to speak had left them reeling. The more they tried to understand him, the more they realized that this was not a battle they could win, with force alone. Commander Ters had spent countless hours observing the soldier, trying to decipher the key to his silence. His frustration had reached a boiling point, and yet he couldn't shake the feeling that the soldier was offering them something more valuable than anything they could extract from his mind. It wasn't just about Earth's defenses or the war. It was about the human spirit, something that no amount of torture, manipulation, or even advanced technology could break. One morning, as Ters walked through the facility, his mind was heavy with the burden of the soldier's silence. The soldier had been in captivity for months, and still, he remained as distant and unyielding as ever. Ters had tried every method. In the book, physical pressure, psychological manipulation, even the telepath's probing, but nothing had worked. The soldier had not revealed a single word. As Ters approached the observation room, he saw the soldier sitting in his usual spot, unmoving, his eyes staring into the distance. The commander paused for a moment, watching the soldier's still form. For the first time, he truly saw the soldier, not as a captive, not as a prisoner, but as something much more. This man, this human, was a symbol of everything the Empire could never understand. He had witnessed the fall of his world, the death of his comrades, yet he was still here, still breathing, still holding on to something that no alien force could grasp. Ters walked into the room, his footsteps echoing in the silence. The soldier did not look up. He didn't even acknowledge the commander's presence. Ters stood in front of him for a moment, considering what to do next. He had tried every approach, and yet nothing had worked. But now, in this moment of quiet reflection, something inside the commander shifted. "You've fought for your people, haven't you?" Ters said, his voice softer than usual. "You've watched everything fall apart, and yet you're still here, still holding on. Why? What is it that keeps you going?" For a long time, there was no answer. Ters could feel the weight of the soldier's gaze, but the silence remained unbroken. The commander's frustration grew, but now there was something else as well. A sense of respect for this man who had endured so much and said so little. He wasn't just a soldier. He was a testament to humanity's unbreakable will to survive. And then, just when Ters thought that the silence would never end, something unexpected happened. The soldier slowly raised his head, his eyes meeting. The commander's for the first time in months. There was no anger in his gaze, no defiance, only a quiet sadness. Ters held his breath, waiting for what would come next. "I didn't survive for you." The soldier finally spoke, his voice hoarse as if it hadn't been used in ages. "I didn't survive for the Empire. I survived because I had to. Because my people, they deserve more than this. They deserve to be remembered." The words hit Ters like a shockwave. The soldier had spoken, finally, but the meaning of his words was far more powerful than any tactical information the Empire had sought. The soldier wasn't speaking because he had been broken or because he had something to reveal. He was speaking because in that moment he chose to. He chose to defy the Empire not with weapons but with his words. Ters was speechless. He had expected to break the soldier through force, to extract information through fear or pressure. But this was different. The soldier wasn't fighting for his own survival anymore. He was fighting for something far greater, the memory of his fallen comrades, the strength of humanity that had survived despite everything the Empire had thrown at them. I will never speak of the things I saw on Earth, the soldier continued, his voice steady though still tinged with pain. Because there are no words for the things we lost, no words for the sacrifices made. But I will tell you this, you will never break humanity. We may fall, but we will rise again always. Ters stood there, stunned. He had come into this room expecting to break the soldier, to force him to reveal his secrets. But instead he had been given something far more valuable. The soldier had shown him that humanity's true strength wasn't in their weapons, their technology, or even their ability to fight. It was in their spirit, in their unyielding desire to survive, to protect what mattered most. It was something the Empire could never defeat. For the first time in months, Ters felt a sense of respect for this human soldier. He had expected to crush the resistance, to wipe out Earth's will to fight. But the soldier had shown him that Earth's spirit was something the Empire could never understand. Humanity was more than just a species to conquer. They were a force that could never be broken. I won't break you, Ters said quietly, his voice filled with a new understanding. You've shown me that. And I see now that you don't need to speak for us to know what you've lost. The soldier's eyes softened, and for the first time, a faint glimmer of something like peace seemed to pass over him. He had not been defeated, nor had he given in. He had chosen to speak, but not out of fear or pain. He had spoken because he knew it was time to let the Empire understand the truth. The room fell silent again. But this time, it was a different kind of silence. It was not one of resistance or stubbornness, but of understanding. The soldier had not given the Empire what they had expected, but in his words, he had given them something far more powerful. The realization that humanity could never be defeated, not by force, not by weapons, and certainly not by silence. As Ters turned to leave, he knew that the Empire's war with humanity was far from over. But the soldier's message had been clear. No matter how many times the Empire struck, humanity would rise again. And this time, they would rise stronger than before. In this final part, the soldier finally speaks, not out of weakness, but out of a deep, unshakable strength. His words are a powerful reminder of humanity's resilience, showing that even in the face of unimaginable loss, the human spirit can never be truly broken. The Empire, now facing a force they cannot defeat, must come to terms with the reality that humanity will always rise again. Miniu,